And Greece is not alone as several other Eurozone countries continue to struggle. I spoke to international economist Dr. Dambisa Moyo about the short and long-term challenges now facing the Eurozone.
I think we have to make a delineation between the tactical short-term trends that we're seeing and the more structural long-term issues. Let me start with the structural longer-term issues, because those are the things that tend to get batted away and nobody really wants to focus on those. If you think about an economy and the three key aspects that drive economic growth, which are capital, labor, and productivity, just looking at an economy, the European economy, in that lens, capital, the debts and deficits, labor, the demographic challenges in terms of unemployment, but also the education, declines in education, and then productivity, declines in productivity that we've seen over the past few decades. The story just is very structurally in a precarious place.
Some would argue that productivity around the world has been increasing, and you're saying that that's a major issue right now. Can you elaborate on what you're seeing?
First of all, the important thing about productivity is that it explains about 60% of why one country grows and another one doesn't. So it's incredibly important. What we've seen in many European countries, give the United Kingdom as an example, is that for the past 10 years, you've actually seen a decline in productivity in every single sector. And we know the story of the wage productivities and concerns in many of the European countries, where they haven't seen enough improvements in labor reform that we need to see. And so that's a big issue in regards to how it is the Europeans will get out of this problem. But if I may, just very quickly, on the tactical short-term side, I mean, I actually don't see the improvements and signs for euphoria the way that people seem to suggest. I think we still have a lot of uncertainty about whether or not the austerity versus the more stimulus approach will work. But also just look at the data that came out last week around Spain. They have now 27%, almost 30% unemployment rate. And I think that's a number that's trending worse rather than better. So there's still lots of issues that need to be addressed.
The three themes, if you will, over the past couple of years in Europe dealing with this crisis has been low interest rates, dealing with unemployment, jobs, you mentioned that, and also this situation of bailouts. I don't want to use that word, but it's basically assistance by its neighbors from different European countries. Are they handling this correctly? I mean, is this the right solution for the problem?
Well, it's interesting you pick on the monetary policy aspect first, because I've actually been quite vocal about how I think that the Europeans have tended to lag behind the Japanese and the Americans, and indeed the United Kingdom also in terms of cutting their rates. I think there's a lot more room there for the ECB to be more aggressive. I mean, places like Denmark have gone into negative interest rates, and I think that the combination of that with some of the policies that we've seen in the United States with QE being much more aggressive than we've seen in Europe.
So you think at the next meeting they should, which is coming up, they should cut rates?
It would seem to me, I mean, the concerns around the European economies remain. And so it would seem, whether it's the PMIs or industrial data, GDP statistics, unemployment numbers, it doesn't look very credible for the interim and longer term story. So I would suggest that they should really be cutting interest rates.
The issue with bailouts, it is very controversial, whether it's for a private company, let alone for an entire country. We've seen it with different parts of Europe, mainly in Southern Europe. Has this risk been diminished in the last 6 to 12 months in European, as we feel that it has been, at least according to the media?
Well, I don't know why people, again, would say that, because just a few weeks ago, we were looking at Cyprus and the concerns around the bailout there. And that, I must say, I think took a lot of people by surprise. I don't think Cyprus was necessarily on the radar. Now, you could argue that Cyprus is relatively small, and the whole argument, but the whole essence, the construct of a common currency is credibility. And to the extent that there are these vulnerabilities that keep popping up and that need to be plugged, it does eat away at the credibility of and sustainability of the euro currency.
That was international economist Dambisa Moyo.